Hello everyone, I'm Dante and welcome to another Anthem update. Today we're breaking down the recent dev livestream covering legendary contracts, what they are and why they're in the game. I think the best way to start this breakdown is to run through some basics. What we got to see in the stream was a 4 full Javelin squad, on a legendary contract for Matthias, hosted by Ben Irving along with Emily Taylor, one of the senior level designers from Edmonton, whose role is tied to the quest design for both regular contracts and the legendary versions. They were playing on hard difficulty with level 30 pilots, equipped in relatively high gear in comparison for what's needed for hard missions. The Javelin in the footage is a ranger being played by Ben, equipped with a heavy pistol, double shotgun, spark beam, sticky grenades and muster point. With the basics out of the way, let's dive into the all new information we get to break down. Starting with, what are legendary contracts? Fortunately, Emily Taylor was able to not only explain what they are, but also how to unlock them and who you'll be getting them from. So let's start with what contracts are to begin with, then move on to what makes them legendary. The initial methodology was to create side quests for Anthem, but something that wasn't generic and felt out of place. Instead, they wanted to emphasize the key descriptors of freelancers and the other factions, primarily being heroic, warriors, and explorers. Each faction embodies one of these core traits, which reflects the type of mission they'll send you on, and the story each have to tell. Which brings us to the actual contract part. As I mentioned, these take the place of side missions, just more contained. Each faction has their own small story to tell, taking place over several missions with a full beginning, middle, and end arc. You will actually progress through their story by helping them, giving opportunities to interact with them, ultimately changing their view on you by the end of the arc. Once this is completed, the side missions don't just end. Instead, legendary contracts turn into repeatable contracts, similar to dailies in other games, but are built to be randomized, picking different zones and missions within them, all of which fit the theme of the faction. The example given in the gameplay was that of the Arcanist, who, if you hadn't realized, fall into the exploration category, which is why you're always having to rescue them, find lost research, or track down relics they want information about. What makes them legendary, however, is twofold. The main part being that they offer far better rewards, and secondly, their difficulty. Even though you might face the same enemies, they will be scaled higher, with increased health, damage, and in some cases, even abilities, rewarding more tactical play from teams, rather than running and gunning your way through enemies. While on these missions, the chance for loot drop increases due to the amount of high-level enemies being faced, which is then enhanced by the difficulty layer. So now we know what a legendary contract is and why they exist. Let's talk about what we get to see in terms of new missions, as just from the gameplay alone for the Arcanist, we got to see 4 different missions, due to a bug on the first run-through. It's important to note that each legendary mission is broken into 3 consecutive activities, that increase in difficulty over time. The first mission we got to see was to silence a relic, guarded by a tanky Ursix and Scorpioid enemies that continue to spawn until the relic is deactivated. A mission where you collect shards from local regions to shut it down. The next was much the same, but guarded by Dominion grunts who also wanted to learn from the relic, showcasing the way in which Anthem will have similar style objectives but with vastly different enemy types, changing up the overall gameplay feel. Fortunately, the last 2 missions were entirely new. One was pretty simple, find and rescue a captured Arcanist, with the last being easily the most difficult encounter we've witnessed on stream. The last mission was to secure an area for the Arcanist so they could continue to gather data. This initially looked like a straight up boss fight with a lesser Ash Titan. However, the beacons in the area that needed to be activated quickly revealed it wasn't 1 but 3, which, as you can see in the footage, became somewhat chaotic for the team to fight all at once, showcasing some of the more complicated monsters you'll see in the world. While we're on the topic of enemies we got to see, we should take some time to explain what we actually saw. Continuing on with the Titans, we got to see a lot more than what was in the free roam IGN footage. We now know that they have 4 abilities. The 2 we saw before, the Ring of Fire and Fireballs, with a new one that creates a small fire elemental that goes out and attacks players, and the final one is a chest beam. All of these do fire damage, overheating the javelins and making it harder to avoid subsequent attacks. In addition to their attacks, we also learnt their weak spots. When they charged up an attack, parts of the Titan, usually its arms, will begin to glow. Doing enough damage to these spots will stagger it briefly, interrupting the attack. requiring more and more coordination as you work through the difficulties. The others we've seen before: Dominion Brutes, Wolven, Scorpioids, and the large Ursics from the beginning. On top of these details, there have been some mechanical changes, one of the more notable being the inclusion of a squad UI, showcasing the health and shields of all members in your party, including a little radar with a direction and general distance. These were requested as quality of life changes in the initial dev streams, so it's good to see features being added so late in the development cycle. What I find interesting from this is either an error in UI or a significant change. The Colossus is supposed to differ from the other javelins in that it doesn't have a regenerating shield, just a truckload of health. Instead, they have a shield that they can deploy in place of additional movement. This indicates that's been changed, making the Colossus even tankier than before. Or it could just be a UI error yet to be corrected. Either a huge change or a mistake. Speculation is abound though. Now for the part most people really want to hear about. What gear did we get to see, and what do we learn from it? Generally, not much, other than a decent amount of gear drops on these contracts. Lucky for us, Ben decided to show us what he got out of the mission and a half. I'd add before we take a look at them, I don't think this includes the actual mission rewards, as I'm not too sure if you physically have to hand it in, or if it auto-completes at the end, which makes the most sense with the setup they have. So let's take a look at the whole endgame screen progress. We run through all the XP and medals earned, including the Alliance bonus. Though Ben did rush through most of these, something I found interesting are the role player styles everyone was given. Not the names necessarily, but the pictures. They look oddly familiar. So I went back and looked at a mural from the Legion of Dawn trailer. They look almost exactly like the figures depicted, right down to the armor they're wearing. So that got me thinking, will all of the roles be based on Legion of Dawn members? Hinting at the roles and personalities of each of its core members. Might be a stretch, but I'd be interested to hear what others think about this idea. When it comes to the weapons themselves, we got our first glimpse at what the Masterwork opening animation looks like, and more importantly, some new items. The key part to look at on all of these are the inscriptions. The Venom Dart itself has many inscriptions that support other slots rather than just boosting its own effectiveness. 3 are weapon specific, and 1 is a general stat to increase all weapon ammo. The stat percentages are also worth noting. The top ones are both significantly lower than the bottom. So are the bottom ones the higher tier versions the Masterwork has access to. But will all stats on a legendary be on this higher tier of stats? If true, we can start theory crafting how much more powerful the legendaries can be. Once we get the full loot screen, we get to see full stats of each. Once we get to the full loot screen, we get to see the full stats of each. On another side note, we can see that across the 5 objectives over that one mission, netted 1 Masterwork, 9 epics and 3 uncommon items. The theme of large inscriptions and smaller ones also carries through to the epic items Ben flicks through, showing off several other inscriptions. Increased sniper damage, sniper ammo, repair drop rates, gear speed, ammo drop rates, rifle ammo, impact damage, and speed. The epic universal component also provides a great example of why you'd want to use these on any javelin. The ultimate inscription baseline increases all ultimate damage by 5%, along with the Colossus version that buffs all fire and lightning damage by 35%, which is a huge buff when it can be stacked. All in all, very interesting to see the Diablo style model in practice, though I hope the legendary versions can be somewhat more unique than just buffing your weapon damage and ammo. We're only a week away from trying out the VIP demo, so we can see for ourselves then. That's it for today's update. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like. Provide your thoughts and feedback about anything I've covered or this format below. You can subscribe to support the channel and use the bell to be notified of future content as it goes live. And until next time, I've been Dante, thanks for watching.